What do coroner's inquests, tax records, and Depression-era work programs have in common? They are all part of the genealogy toolbox of professional genealogists. In this video, I am pulling back the curtain and sharing with you 10 unusual record collections that you can use to help move your genealogy research forward as well. Hey there, I am Lisa Lisson, a genealogy expert with over 15 years of experience helping people find their ancestors. On this YouTube channel, I share my best strategies, tools, and tips for uncovering your family history and building a healthy family tree without being overwhelmed. All right, guys, let's talk about those unusual records. When we are looking for our ancestors, we are going to encounter those troublesome ancestors who really, well, just don't seem to want to be found. And when that happens, we need to move beyond the basic genealogy records that we might be comfortable with. You know, those birth, marriage, death records, those census records, those types of records that we use commonly for our research. We're very comfortable with those. But we're going to need to move beyond those records into maybe some lesser known record collections, some lesser used records. We're going to need to stretch our research abilities a little bit. And so let's just jump right into the very first unusual record collection that I want to share with you, and that is coroner's inquest. They are official investigations into usually unexpected deaths. And if your ancestor falls into this category, maybe you've discovered that there was something a little unusual about when your ancestor passed away. You found that in a newspaper article. Then you might want to see if you can find a coroner's inquest on that individual. You can use these coroner's inquests to really uncover some interesting information about not just your ancestor's death and time of death, but you may also be able to find information on family members, close associates that you can use in your research as well. Now, the thing with coroner's inquests is that they are oftentimes not online. You're going to need to seek those out at the county level, county courthouses or state archives. I do occasionally see some indices online. So, for instance, Missouri Digital Heritage Center does have coroner's inquest online. It's the index, not the actual request. You have to request for the actual record, but the index is online. So you may get lucky, but if you're struggling with this, my best thing to recommend to you would be to reach out to the state archives for the area where your ancestor lived and ask them how to perhaps go about finding those records. Next up are Freedmen's Bureau records. Now, for those of you who are researching African American ancestors and enslaved ancestors, the Freedmen's Bureau records, they are the post-Civil War records for those individuals who had been enslaved but are now free. They are extremely valuable in your African American research because they provide information on family relationships as well as living conditions. Now, these are available online through Ancestry as well as Family Search. Next up is the Civilian Conservation Corps records, or sometimes referred to as the CCC records. Now, these are Depression-era work program records, and they are useful for finding information about those who participated, including work assignments and family relationships. I actually have had experience in researching these and have found them so detailed when it came to getting information about my ancestor. My grandfather actually did participate in the CCC program in North Carolina, and his records are detailed in who he was, and it gave a physical description of him. It talks about his character. It gives information on his character as well as his family and who the money was sent back to that he was paid. So this is great information, not just on details about family members, but there are not many records out there where it states what an individual's physical appearance looks like and speaks to their character. So this is a really cool piece of information to get. I have also seen things as detailed as in these records as your information on your ancestors' health history. I can tell you with one of my grandfather's brothers, my uncle, I know what his immunization records look like at this point because of the CCC records. So these are very helpful and very detailed information about these individuals. Now, to find these are not online. You need to order these records through the National Archives or through NARA. I'll have a link for this in the description below. And it can get kind of pricey, quite frankly. So this is not really the first set of records I'm going to go after, but when I'm stuck, absolutely, I'm going to go ahead and order these. It does take time. Again, it does cost money. There's a payment involved. So, but I want you to keep this in your back pocket because these are important records for you to know about in case you need them for your future research. Now, next up is a set of records that I personally have not had a lot of experience with, and that is the Homestead Act Records. These are documents related to land claims of the Homestead Act of 1862, and researchers use these to trace land ownership and family migration patterns. And to see these and to access some of these, you're going to want to go to the Bureau of Land Management website. And I will have that link as well as any of the links that we discuss here in the description below for you. Now, next up is actually one of my favorite types of record collections that I use, and that is tax records. Now, why do I love tax records so much? Because they can actually act as a census substitute, a partial census substitute for years maybe where I can't find an ancestor in a census record, or maybe the record didn't survive for that area for that particular time period. Think 1890, where we don't have a federal census that we can look at. So that census record is a partial census substitute that we can use. Additionally, census records, as we know, will document in the US populations, every 10 years, but a tax record will go year by year. And that can be very helpful in monitoring an ancestor's movement patterns and socioeconomic state within a very narrow time range. Now, where do I find these? You can find some tax records in the online genealogy databases, such as Ancestry.com, Family Search, MyHeritage. Sometimes you'll just find the listing. Sometimes you'll find actual digital images of the original records. Other places, though, to look would be the state archives or the county courthouse. I typically find a lot of these older ones in these state archives, and I find them very, very helpful to be able to, again, go in and document my ancestor year by year and really look at what's happening at that economic level for my ancestor. Let me know in the comments below the most unusual record collection that you've used in your genealogy research. I love learning about new resources from you guys as well. Now, next up, let's talk about newspaper social columns. Now, yes, guys, I have talked about newspaper research in the past because I just love it. I find so much fabulous information about ancestors and families and communities within the newspaper. But specifically, again, looking at that social column, sometimes it might be referred to as a community column. And I will put a link in the description below, as well as up above here, that will to another video where I have discussed using newspaper research and these social columns for your newspaper research and finding your ancestors. But again, we want to make sure that we are using them. If this is your first time kind of hearing this term, make sure you get into your newspapers to find this. This is where local newspaper writers talk about who came to visit so-and-so and who left the community to go visit so-and-so, which church is having the revival for that particular time period, which social group is having a get-together, which family is having a reunion, where are people coming from, you see listings about illnesses, people who got ill while they were away on vacation. All of these kinds of information you can find in a social column and a local newspaper. So you definitely want to make sure you include that as well in your research. Now, of course, newspapers, and I've talked about newspapers here on the channel before. Newspapers.com, Ancestry.com, MyHeritage, Find My Past, Family Search, all Genealogy Bank. These are all resources for newspapers. And don't forget Chronicling America. Again, that's a free one over at the Library of Congress online. So make sure you're checking out all of these newspaper research. Make sure you're checking out all of these newspaper resources for your ancestors. Next up is voter registration records. And well, that's exactly what it is. It is a list of eligible voters for a particular community. This is very helpful in the sense that it tells us who is in the community. It gives us the community makeup, but it also puts your ancestor in place and time. So these can be important resources when you're really trying to nail down where your ancestor actually is at a given point in time. And so you want to check these as well. These can be found. There are some that can be found on Ancestry, at Family Search, again, MyHeritage, the major genealogy databases. You may also, I'm sure there are many that are not online that you would need to perhaps seek out at, say, a state archives or a county courthouse. Now, next up are draft records. World War I and World War II draft records are an amazing collection of that provides some really unique information for you as a genealogy researcher. And some of it, well, is a bit unusual. It certainly gives the gentleman's name, usually a full name. Often it'll give a request for a next of kin. Sometimes that might be a spouse. Perhaps if they're single, that's going to be a parent. So it could be a mother, it could be a father, it could be a brother. So this is going to be somebody who would know where they, who they are and where they are at any given point in time. It gives their physical address. It talks about perhaps their occupation and where, and as well as an employer's address. I love the backs of the cards. So always make sure you when you're looking at these to check the back side, because it gives a physical description of your ancestor: height, approximate weight, hair color, eye color, interesting things, anything notable, say scars or anything that might be out of the ordinary. So this is a really unique one place you can also get a physical description of your ancestor. So quite a unique collection. You want to make sure you are not overlooking these. Find these in those online databases that we've been talking about throughout. Now, next up would be city directories. Now, these are, again, like tax records, these are lesser used records, but city directories are fabulous. These are, again, one of my favorite collections that I use frequently in my genealogy research, both for myself and for when I've worked with clients and helping people when we're exploring those genealogy consults and VIP days. We use these city directories a lot. They are listings of the residents of a city or a town or a region. And not just the residents, but also businesses as well. Now, these are very useful for tracking an ancestor's movements within that town or that region, as well as their occupation. And just like those tax records, these can be used to track your ancestor year by year or every couple years between those census years. Many of these can be found on the major genealogy databases, as well as check out Google Books. You can find many of these for free online at Google Books as well. And absolutely do not overlook the local library for where your ancestor may have lived. Reach out to that reference librarian for what they might have as on city directories if you are not finding what you need online. Additionally, in the description below, I will have a link. I've got a full blog post that I have written on city directories. I will have that link in that description below as well. All right, next up are the Sanborn Fire Insurance Maps, oftentimes just referred to as Sandborn Maps. These are detailed maps of U.S. cities and towns that were used by the fire insurance company. They provide detailed information on structures and buildings and properties where our ancestors lived and worked. They can also help you locate addresses that may no longer exist anymore by using that map of that time period. They're actually very beautiful maps. They're colorful. They will have residences listed. They can have businesses listed. Additionally, these Sanborn maps, they offer insights into the neighborhood and the living conditions of your ancestors. Now, these are quite easy to find. You will find them online at the Library of Congress. I'll have that link again down in the description below. So you definitely want to check these out. They are a fascinating look at the cities and towns where your ancestors may have lived. Now, I want to make sure that you are getting the most out of your genealogy research, both the common and the uncommon record collections. So I've got another video I want you to see called Genealogy Gold: Hunting Ancestors Through Legal Notices in the Newspaper. It's on your screen now.